I want to talk about bogies, wheels, trucks for a second. The cars, the rail cars, ride on these what some people call trucks or wheels, bogies, whatever. Before the mid to late 19th century, rail cars, the wheels, the axles, were mounted directly to the frame. And as you might imagine, that made a rather uncomfortable ride. So what they did, sometime in the late 19th century, they went to bogies. And so what we have here then is the axles are mounted to a carrier here, and then the whole thing is mounted to a central pivot. Now in real life, here in this model, there's a screw where the pivot point is. In real life, that would be a single pivot, but it would have a spring. And so the bogies themselves had flex in the truck, and then they also, when they were attached to the car, had a spring. So it's kind of like a double spring, and it made for a much smoother ride. The other advantage is that the trucks can rotate, and so that means that you can have longer cars, because you can go around the corner because they rotate independently. So you can go around a little bit tighter curves. So that was a pretty big advantage, big step forward. And so you ended up with, this is not even the longest, scale model rail car, but this one you can see how much longer, they went, and they get even bigger. And but anyway, that was just something I had read recently and kind of figured out, as that was when that happened, was the late 19th century. So I'm working on the hill, and I have, as I mentioned in the previous episode, I did some filing in it, but then I realized, when I've got this multiple stack here, it doesn't matter how much I smooth this out, there's always going to be a bit of a seam. So what I decided to do is go ahead and use the plaster cloth, and so I stopped my smoothing, and I'm going to put some rolled up paper here to kind of fill in the gap and make it more rounded. So what I'm using is Woodland Scenics plaster cloth, and it comes in a roll of, and basically it's really easy to use. You just take a scissors and you just cut whatever shape or size you want, and you can, when you put them in there, you can overlap them, so they don't have to be perfect. They can, in fact, it's a good idea to actually put more than one layer so you can overlap them. And then you just dip it in some water briefly. They don't have to soak or anything. And so I'm using this tray for, a paint roller, and just put a little water in it and get it wet. And then, of course, now I'm just doing that with one hand because I was trying to move the camera at the same time. And then just, find a spot where you want to start and lay it down. And I'm going to go ahead and do that off camera, and then I'll show you the result when I'm done. Okay, so I went ahead and finished it up. Let's take a look at it here. So I got it all covered with the plaster cloth. You just kind of lay it down and then kind of run on your finger over it to kind of move it in. And now it's going to have to dry thoroughly before I can paint it. So it's going to be, I'll have to let it dry overnight probably before I can paint it. But I do like the way, it's got some lumpy, bumpy stuff, like, in real life, hills aren't perfectly smooth. And yet it's kind of rounded, which is what I wanted. There's no sharp corners. So this would be more like a hill that's covered with soil rather than just bare rock. At least that was my idea. And it's not quite as tall as the other one. It only goes up to the second layer. But you can see now here where I had that real seam where I filled it with roll-up newspaper and then covered it, and now it's, you know, got more of a smooth angled surface there. So there we have it. Okay, let's talk a little bit about reversing loops. Remember I had talked in a previous episode about reversing loop. I'm ready to go ahead and set my reversing loop here. So what I've got, first thing I did was I bought from Bachmann an E-Z command. This is designed to work with their controller. It's got an input and output. It's got a dial on the front for which scale, N scale, HO scale, larger scale. So I set it for HO scale, and what I've done is I could run the cable off of the back side of this, but I went ahead and put my other, I'm going to put my other power strip, connector strip here, and I'm going to connect into that. So what I need to do, quite simply, is I need to have this connector needs to come in between the rest of the track and then the reversing loop. So what I need to do is the reversing loop has to be isolated, electrically isolated from the rest of the track. And so what a lot of people do is they use non-conductive connectors on their track, like they'll put, you know, like little plastic or rubber or whatever non-conductive material as the joiners for their track. What I've done is I've gone ahead and I'm going to pull this out. I've gone ahead and bought two of these. So this is a Bachmann. I'll put the descriptions in the bottom of the video for both the pieces of equipment I'm talking about here. But basically what this is, it's a regular E-Z Track straight, but it has, in the middle of it, there's a disconnect. Now you probably can't see that, but there's just a very small gap in the rails, right in the middle. And on the back, there's a little connector here, and you can connect or unconnect the rails by swinging this little piece of metal back and forth to make the connections for each rail. That way, if you wanted to, this could be, you could use this as just a regular straight section of track if you connected it. But I've disconnected it, and then I've got another one on the other side of the loop. So both sides of my loop, the loop is going to be isolated from the rest of the track. And then there's a connector on the bottom here. So the loop will have its own connector. So basically then what happens is the main part of the track feeds its power into this device, and then this device turns around and powers just the reversing loop, which is isolated from the rest of the track. So when the reversing loop senses that it needs to do a reverse to prevent a short, it does it, and that only affects the isolated loop. So when the train comes back out of the track, then everything should be okay. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the video at this point and hook this up, and hopefully when I come back, we'll have it working. So here goes my very first try on the loop. We take the diesel out with a coal car and a caboose and see what happens. And it should be entering the loop about now. It still has power. Now while it's going around the loop, I don't have this set up automatically yet, so I'm going to manually throw this switch there. So when she comes back, well, here in the foreground while she's going around, this is that new hill. So I spray painted it with green and brown paint, and I added some rough turf and some small shrubs to it. I might still dress it up a little bit. Okay, well anyway, here she comes. And she made it. And no shorts. All right. Go ahead and shut her down. So this minor shot there. Yeah, this box then can get mounted, I think, under the table, and I can drill a couple of holes here. That was one reason why I wanted to use, this wire over here, was because then I could use the other one too. I might actually rethink my design and come up with multiple reversing loops at some point. But for now, that's it. So I'm going to end my weekly show right here. Oh, I wanted to show you one other thing I got. This is from Woodland Scenics. This is a cougar. There's a cougar here with a couple little cubs and a couple other cougars, and they're going to go on some of those hills in the background there too when I get around to it. And they're HO scale, and they're from Woodland Scenics, Scenic Accents. So that's it for this week from the Newbie Railroad.